The Garden of Eden, produced by Roger Sherman, class of 1973. The Times of Harvey Milk, directed by Robert Epstein, class of 73. Graffiti, directed by Matthew Patrick, class of 75. The Wizard of the Strings, directed by Peter Friedman, class of 76. And The Statue of Liberty, produced by Ken Burns, class of 71, and Buddy Squires, class of 74. It's incredible. There have been 6 Academy Award nominations for Hampshire alumni-produced films, 5 nominations in the last 2 years. And it doesn't stop there with Hampshire graduates. They're businessmen, doctors, lawyers, astrophysicists, every field. There's been a Hampshire student excelling.
When a student leaves Hampshire, they have developed, in the midst of their particular studies, the abilities of independent thinking, critical exchange, and the capacity to produce an end product for which they are responsible.
Here, a student has to create their own path. And so that they may end up doing something that looks very much like political science somewhere else, but they have to think through what that is. It's not set out for them.
That insists at an early point that you take responsibility for your own curriculum, that you think, that you don't just memorize, that you devise examinations for yourself by thinking, pushing limits, pushing norms, questioning everything that's around you. What Hampshire did quite uniquely was to demand that I don't get involved in rote mechanical process, that I don't accept what's been taught as just a given. And you carry that with you well past your years at Hampshire College.
Well, let me ask you, what would you say the nugget of the whole question is that we're trying to deal with?
It could be interflow as opposed to base flow.
Its spring was so tiny. It was dry the last time we went.
Yeah, or it could have been the surface drainage that was being fed by as well.
I think the thing that keeps you going as an intellectual adult is the excitement to find out new things, inner excitement. And that's really what goes on at Hampshire. Students, by virtue of having to ask their own questions, know how to do it for the rest of their lives, and it's a very rewarding thing. One of the things that often happens at Hampshire is that students who come thinking they have no interest whatever in science find that they're fascinated by science. And I think that this may be the first time that they've been trying to deal with real-world questions, things that have social importance but are based on scientific inquiry. And it's not simply doing a cookbook laboratory. The Quabbin Reservoir is the largest man-made drinking supply system in the world, and it's threatened by acid rain. What we're trying to do here is to understand the effect that acid rain has had on it over the last 40 years. We're out trying to investigate something for which no answer yet is known, and sure, mistakes will be made, but there's so much learning that comes about through making those mistakes.
No grades, terrific. You know, I don't ever have to think about tests again. I was really excited. And I got here and I found after my first semester I was a little bit like, oh my gosh, there are no grades. What are these evaluations going to say about me? And I read them and I said, that's actually a good reflection of what I did.
The absence of grades does something that is, on the one hand, it deformalizes the process of education, and on the other hand, deepens it very greatly. You can't do more than get an A. Where do you go after that? Here, it's the cumulative growth that they have achieved over 4 years that counts, and not the grade point average.
The thing is, when we go up to the government and say, I want to know why this is happening now, we don't get shot or we don't get imprisoned.
Yeah, but if you've got to control people by shooting them and throwing them in prison, you don't really have much control. You're just oppressing by terror. But if you oppress by apathy, you've got much more control.
Okay, look back. I mean, let's ask the same question in a slightly different way.
I think that there's a lot of talk about Hampshire being a place where students can do their own thing. And in some ways, that can be very frightening to students who are only 18 years old. So it's the role of the advisors and the role of the faculty in general to help guide students into something that's doable and something that's understandable and something that they can complete.
The title of my senior thesis, My Mother's Legacy, an Analysis of Alienation of Middle-Class Black Women.
Implementing solar energy.
Man, power, and desire.
Feminism. The personal is the political.
The experience of man in the wilderness.
Linguistics and dance.
The political economy of international communications.
Biological and anthropological approach to marine science.
Digging into prose fiction.
Firewalking, healing, and the myth of reality.
Mark Twain, the genius who never grew up.
Writing, performance, and video of my own band, You and I.
My final project at Hampshire was the design and construction of a multi-terrain wheelchair. I'm a bicycle racer and have had a number of accidents which have incapacitated me for short periods of time. During those times, I realized wheelchairs are made for smooth pavement only. So I decided to try and design equipment that would give handicapped people more independence. In order to build this wheelchair, I did work in a number of disciplines: ergonometry, exercise physiology, and mechanical design. The result is the first wheelchair that can go through grass, fields, woods, as well as on smooth pavement.
And a lot of Hampshire students move into areas of specialization. What they value is that they are getting forms of education that constantly open up to them the terms of the world around them, so that as they move towards that specialization, it's not a closure into the discipline and its profession, but it's surrounding that movement with an alert, critical mind, able to move in many different directions. In this class, I'm a professor of literature. Carol is a professor of politics from the School of Social Science.
Marxism is a kind of sense that he was responsible, or that there was no injustice, no amount of suffering that was tolerable.
I still find it very elusive at some level. Where do you get the strength? I am bringing to the class a kind of reading of people's lives and their writings, informed by literary criticism, literary theory. She is bringing to the class a range of historical and political frameworks, which then become part of the dialogue of the classroom. In another class that I've taught, for example, there was a physicist, a sociologist, and I myself a professor of literature.
Hampshire helps students go beyond the facts, I think, and look beyond the facts just by the kinds of courses that we offer and the kinds of questions that we ask students. Hampshire students have quite a reputation for being the students in the 5 college courses who raise their hands and want to know more and who want to get behind what it is the professor is saying.
Hampshire is a small school with 900 to 1,000 students, and the access to Smith, to Mount Holyoke, and UMass and Amherst allowed me to take courses in specific areas, Japanese and advanced French, that I wouldn't have been able to take at Hampshire. But I've always come back and I could use what I got out of the courses for my work at Hampshire. All the libraries, art exhibits, tons of cultural events expand the resources incredibly.
4-year period, probably the most important 4-year period in my life, I went through many changes. From 18 years old to 22 years old, plus or minus. My interests, my wants, my connection to the world changed greatly. And fortunately, I could tailor my academic program to follow those changes. Stonyfield Yogurt's a 3-year-old yogurt operation that's taking on some of the big multinationals in the supermarket. We're producing on our little farm the highest quality, most natural, non-acidic yogurt that's out there today. Really, the genesis of this company began at Hampshire. Through my 4 years there, I was taught to challenge the status quo. It's probably one of the great contributions of my time there. The fact is, there's always room for a better product. There's always room for a better business. There's always room for the little guy to make headway in the world of the giants as long as you're creative and entrepreneurial. And the college taught me that there are things wrong in the world, in the environmental disciplines, and that I can make a contribution to correcting them, even my own little tiny self.
Law school requires discipline and hard work, and I think Hampshire College certainly teaches you that you must develop internal discipline. If nothing else, when you get to law school after a Hampshire experience, you realize that the best way to deal with the competition is to simply rise above it.
There's something about being able to make choices and feeling good about those choices and having ideas and going with them and seeing what happens, and that's exciting. And it's also being around people who are excited about their work. Everybody's into their own thing, and people aren't doing stuff because they feel like they have to.
Hampshire says in its motto, non satis scire, to know is not enough. What they're trying to say is that you can accumulate not just knowledge, but how to use that knowledge. And then when you're out of Hampshire, you have a creative relationship to the problems, to the processes of the world. And that's what life is about. It's not knowing the answers, it's having a relationship with the problems. And Hampshire arms you in the best kind of way.
Studies of abstract photographs.
Design and construction of a spectrum frequency analyzer.
Theater and video production and criticism.
The prospect and its pieces, co-vision.
Economic, ecological, social integration.
Women, estrogen,